Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sims?
Here.
Councilman Pataglia?
Here.
Mayor LaBrus?
Here.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6 at SEC. Notice having been published according to law, with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act and recent regulations issued by the state of New Jersey, the following procedures will be in effect for public comment during this remote public meeting of the City Council. The public shall have an opportunity for comment during the designated public portion of this meeting. The time period for public comment is limited to 3 minutes for each speaker, and no person may address the council more than once, except for speaking during an advertised public hearing for an ordinance. At the time designated for public comment, the mayor or other presiding officer of the council will recognize one speaker at a time. That speaker must identify himself or herself by full name and whether or not he or she resides in Hackensack. No other member of the public is permitted to speak unless recognized by the presiding officer, and other remote attendees may be muted during that time if necessary to eliminate background noise. Meeting attendees shall exhibit appropriate demeanor during this meeting as required by Section 37-15 of the City Code. In the event any member of the public becomes disruptive at any time, that individual may be muted by the presiding officer and will receive a warning that continued disruption may result in being prevented from speaking or removed from the meeting entirely. The Zoom meeting platform has a texting function. However, this is to be used only for the purpose of advising the city's IT staff of any technical concerns or issues. The public may also submit written public comment to be audibly read into the record by the city clerk during the public portion of any remote public meeting of the City Council. Comments can be submitted by regular mail or by email to asab@hackensack.org. Comments received less than 5 hours before the start of a meeting may be carried to the next meeting. Any person who actually speaks during the public comment portion of a remote public meeting may not also have a comment read into the record. The city clerk will stop reading a written comment into the public record once it reaches a 3-minute limit. Duplicate written comments may be summarized and noted for the record in a consistent manner.
Okay, would everybody please rise to the flag salute? No, I'm sorry, roll call?
We did the roll call. It is the flag salute.
Thank you. Let's do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
to the republic
Republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation, under
under
God,
God,
Indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. And with that, we go right to the agenda, Jackie.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. First on our agenda tonight, we have Erin Abline from Suburban Consulting Engineers here to present to the council. She has some information regarding Green Acres and future grant opportunities. In addition, she will be requesting to perform a parks master plan. Erin?
Yeah, hey, Jackie, before we get started, hey, I just wanted to do the closed session part of this because we missed that going in. So just want to put on the record before we get started with the cow that prior to this meeting, we had a closed executive session. As per our usual course, I do need to announce that we discussed a number of litigation, the Thompson case, the Walker case, which is a workers' compensation case. The Walker's a workers' compensation case, the Thompson case, and the Vasquez case. So just need to put that on the record.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead, Erin.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. I'm gonna pull up a exhibit real quick and then I'll get started. So thank you all again. I've been asked tonight just to give a brief update on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and also the continued pursuit of grants that continue to be actively pursued to improve the city's parks. The true way to strengthen the city's parks and the recreation is through comprehensive and strategic planning, and the city is actively pursuing that. So we wanted to give a brief update. So currently the DCA is working to finalize the city's parks and recreation element of the master plan. That's kind of step one. This included various surveys that were answered by the city's residents, and it will almost produce like a market study, if you would, for what the residents are desiring to see and maybe what the city's parks are lacking. So upon receipt of this, we are asking to perform a full master plan. And this master plan would prioritize improvements and capitalize on grant opportunities and partnerships. Continue to do what the city has been doing very successfully. Next week during a special meeting, you're going to hear about some additional improvements through the pursuit of Green Acres grants. And these are going to be at Columbus and Carver Park. And just to confirm, can everyone see this overall park layout?
Yes.
Okay. So I thought it was important to let you all know and for the public to understand Green Acres has some restrictions with it, and it's important to consider when we look to apply for these grants. Commonly people say nothing's for free, right? There are restrictions that come when you get Green Acres funding. Some of these restrictions impact parks, they impact every park in a different way. So again, it requires consideration. Some of the impacts are the requirement for public access, the requirement for how much it would cost for the city's recreation programs, the maintenance of the parks, and just some flexibility for the city to continue to reevaluate and for the parks to grow with the city. So a very common way to use these grants is to continue to fund projects that are at existing funded sites. And that is to, again, just mitigate the impacts on the city's residents and capitalize on this free money available to further the goals of the park. So that's why you're going to see next week, we're going to talk about Columbus and Carver Park again during that special meeting for some grants that are coming up. And just again to show on this map, there's red and green. Red parks are funded by Green Acres. Green parks are not. And then the listing here under all of the parks just shows the various grants in the last few years that have been obtained. I know it's hard to see, but if you zoom in, you could see there's so many grants that the city's pursuing to advance their goals at the parks. There's consideration being made to ensure that the continued use and improvements best serve the residents. And I really look forward to continuing to advance this in a master plan. And hopefully next time I'm presenting, I could talk with a little bit more detail about this. So that's my update.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Aaron.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions?
No question.
Okay. See you on the 22nd.
Okay, our second agenda item is in regards to the Neighborhood Preservation Program, the NPP grant. I would ask that Albert did please address the council regarding this grant opportunity.
Thanks, Jackie. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for getting this on the agenda for tonight. It's a grant that I have only vague familiarity with. I know of its use in Garfield, where Greater Bergen Alliance was very instrumental in doing the visioning and the implementation. And I feel that now would be a good time to take a close look at Anderson Street in particular, and perhaps how Anderson Street ties into Main Street. There are many different ways that the grant funds can be used. There is a match requirement that Lynn Allgrant will speak to in a few minutes, but the ask here tonight really is that the mayor and council allow us to move forward. The grant deadline is August, so there's only a handful of meetings between now and then. And while we don't have a comprehensive plan as to what we would like to do with those grants, we at least wanted to introduce you to the idea of it and to gauge your initial feedback. So without further ado, I will let Lynn and or Bob Walsh, if he's on, take the floor from here.
Okay, thanks, Albert. I'll kick it off. Good evening, everyone. We'll be brief. The Neighborhood Preservation Program is a grant that comes out of the state of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Greater Bergen Community Action has used it successfully, is using it now in the city of Garfield, where we have obtained a 5-year grant to stimulate economic development and improvements along the Passaic Street business corridor in that city. These grants are designed to stimulate economic development and to bring stakeholder groups together that can catalyze further job growth and economic stimulus in very defined areas. The funds can be used in a variety of ways. And it is really designed to engage the grassroots business owners, landlords, and residents of a neighborhood, such that if the city secured this grant, you would put together a stakeholder team of 10 people, which would involve bankers, business owners, landlords, and residents, clergy, and the like, who would put a 5-year plan together. And that 5-year plan would call for any number of improvements in the district and would be a plan for leveraging additional funding. So for example, in Garfield, we received a 5-year, $500,000 grant with a commitment of a city match of 20%, so another $100,000. We have already leveraged several $100,000 of additional funding off of that initial grant because it put in place the building blocks to be able to lay groundwork for additional funding and investment in the neighborhood. And we are now on the verge of securing a commitment for $1 million of additional neighborhood revitalization tax credit funding year over year off of the neighborhood planning grant that started with the NPP. So we think this is a very successful and stimulative program, and we'd love to see it happen in Hackensack. We have spoken to DCA about its interest in Hackensack, and they are very interested in Hackensack. We do believe that if the city applied, it has a very good chance of getting funded. We think there are certain neighborhoods in the city where this would be value added. I think Anderson Street is certainly one. And I think the city would be competitive there because it's also in the opportunity zone. It's a new market tax credit eligible area and is adjacent to the downtown rehabilitation zone. So there's a lot of value added that already exists for which the city would get points in an application. So that's the program in an overview. It starts with an 18-month, $125,000 portion of the grant. And that first 18 months is for planning and first year implementation. In Garfield, we've done things like art installations, facade improvements on businesses, small grants to businesses. We have a clean streets, initiative going on. A whole host of activities. And we were able to give out significant number of business support grants during COVID, which were very stimulative to those businesses. When the state funds programs like this, it tends to pile other money in when other money comes. And that happened with the COVID money. So it's very foundational. If the city thought that the Anderson Street corridor, that historic district there, and any wraparound to Main Street, was an area where they'd like to see some additional attention paid, I think this is an interesting way to make that happen. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Lynn, if you have any additional comments that you would share.
The only other thing that I would say that's really intriguing to me about the way the NPP program is designed is that it's really designed to invest in the people who are already there. I think sometimes when new money and new opportunity comes, people who've been there for a long time, the businesses that have been there feel like they're about to displace them and bring in new people. But this one is really designed to invest in the anchor stakeholders who've always held that neighborhood together and just to help lift them up. And that's something that's unusual to me. And it's been very interesting and exciting to watch that happen as we've worked with it.
Guys, will this panel be put together with the ones deciding where the focus of the money would be going? Is that part of what would be done?
That's right, Mayor. Although the city council has the final approval of the budget and the plan.
Right. Okay. Sounds like a plan. Would council questions? None? Looks like Leo.
What really is the real plan for Anderson Street in the next few years? They're gonna be like to enhance the business they already there, or they're gonna do something else?
Well, under this program, we would talk to all the businesses that are there and try to identify what their needs are, what their investment needs are, what their growth potential is, what their sustainability is, and what assistance they might need. We'd look at vacant properties and see what might attract new businesses to those properties. We'd look at landlords' long-term plans for their properties. We'd look at plans for repurposing underutilized or vacant properties. Maybe the convent. This is part of the Catholic Church. There are other potential properties that are interesting over there. And we would look to dovetail with any other long-term plans of developers in that area as well. So we would be at value added for developers. So for example, in Garfield, we're working with a developer well in Hackensack, Meridia, Capadagli Properties. And they are working with us to put 100 units of new housing up there. And the NPP program is layering onto their plan so that we are value added to what they're doing and they're value added to what the NPP program is designed to do. So things like signage over the street and entry, district entry signage that will kind of identify that developer's property and what's happening all around his development. These are things that work interactively. And that's what this program is designed to do.
Bob, as you know, we already have some development plan for over there. So I think that it sounds very interesting to see if a program like this could help the current businesses that are there adapt to new clientele as well. Understanding, hey, there's going to be some new folks living on this street, more people living on this street than you're accustomed to. And, is that the kind of thing that they would do too, is to help them grow their business or enable them to grow with the changing community?
100%, Deputy Mayor, yes. And we would link in the First Bergen Federal Credit Union, which we've done in Garfield, for additional business loans and investment, as well as banking opportunities for residents who are underbanked in that area. So there's all kinds of ways to link in stakeholders in a new paradigm that doesn't exist right now.
What about to do some simple infrastructure work there too, for this, as far as the city goes? Like if we wanted to do some new streetscape improvements like we did on Main Street, could we be looking at doing that type of thing as well?
Yes, there is, to an extent, it can be used for streetscape. There's
Again, that took up a lot of the businesses on Main Street. I mean, you can see they saw the new streetscape coming in and they invested in themselves as well to make their properties look even better, to go along with what was happening. So I think, that's all, it goes part and parcel together to really enlivening the whole business area.
That's right. And the architecture on Anderson, as it approaches Main, is beautiful.
Yes.
And some really interesting things could be done there.
Yes. Sounds good.
Bob, could you, before you go, and I don't want to take up much more time at all, can you just take us through what you need from the city to advance this, what commitments, what resolutions, just and we can drill down on that more, but just what should the council expect over the next several meetings?
Well, so the city needs to make the application, and the way we did it in Garfield is we were designated by the city to write the application and submit it in the city's behalf through the SAGE system. We got access to the city's SAGE system to do that. And then we designated an NPP coordinator on our staff who is in part funded by the grant. And then we submitted the plan in the city's behalf. So that's what we would propose. If the city was going to use its grant writing firm, Millennium, to submit the grant, we would collaborate with them. Although I think it's a cleaner process if we simply just did it.
Okay, very good. So we will talk offline. I imagine we'll need to coordinate with our CFO on SAGE. Jim, I don't know. I know you're on. I don't know if you have any thoughts or questions before we let them go, or we could just talk offline about that.
If I have any questions, I'll reach out to Bob offline. Okay.
Very, very good. Everybody, thanks so much for making the time. And if you have any questions, feel free to follow up directly with me. And we'll get the process started.
Bob.
Yes,
Bob. There are 6 barbershops on Anderson Street, a pizza shop, a liquor store, and 3 other deli type stores, and a shoe shop. What would you possibly do to enhance that?
Well, it sounds like Passaic Street and Garfield. And, you know, we're working individually with each of those businesses. So some of them are doing facade improvements or looking to do additional facade improvements. Some of them have done interior work, you know, in their stores. Some of them may be looking to do business expansion. And so we would work with them on a business expansion plan and probably and finding ways to get other investment into their company. You know, so a variety, and we'd be looking at any vacant storefronts and the future plans of landlords with respect to other retail space in terms of attracting new businesses.
So are you saying the city would partner to help put money towards expanding a barbershop or a deli or the cleaners or the shoe shop? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not saying the city would partner in the investment, but this grant through which the city would partner with us would enable us to engage these business owners and help them plan for their future business success.
So you might think of it, Dave, Mr. Sims, Councilman Sims, as let's say the deli owner wants to do more food delivery business because that's hot, but he doesn't or she doesn't know how to do that. We might be able through NPP to give them a grant to help them do that and some technical assistance to be able to transform themselves from just a deli to whatever is food preparation of the future kind of idea. Or build a website, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Unless there are any other questions.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
Thank you,
Thank
Al.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay, next.
All right, number
next
3.
Number 3, I would like to discuss with the city council, the city introducing a new way towards social media and getting on Instagram and Facebook. By doing this, we would be able to reach more residents for events, emergencies, and important information going on in the community. So I wanted to discuss with you getting started with that between our IT department and our PR firm, working together to get an Instagram page and also a Facebook page where we can monitor comments, but also post events and things to the community, since we do use Nixle and we do use our website, but we do have a little bit of an area where some people aren't subscribed through Nixle or maybe don't see our communications via our website. So this would expand our communications within the community. So I wanted to get your feedback, see if you have any questions on how we can get this done to make it a positive thing for the residents of Hackensack. Does anyone have any feedback?
Well, I think we definitely need to move forward because we got to get more interaction between the residents and the city. So, you know, there are some concerns which we've had in the past, but I think we can work around them. The Instagram page, like you said, the summer events, emergency information, Facebook. You know, the biggest problem with Facebook is inappropriate comments, but we're going to have to monitor that.
I did speak to our PR firm in regards to other municipalities and what they're doing with their current Facebook pages. And he advised that a general public comment policy could be posted. So things like vulgar language, as an example, would be removed, not necessarily someone's opinions or how they feel about a situation. It would be monitored in that respect. So we respect everyone's opinion. Maybe they don't like something, but we would keep it in a respectful manner. It would not be removed. If that gives any clarity to the comment.
And I'll make sure that any policy that, if you choose to go forward with this, complies with the requirements. As you know, we've even litigated on this issue before. And so we know where the appropriate boundaries are. There is no right to to vulgarity. There is no right to, inappropriate posts, but people do have the right to express different opinions than what the governing body might see. That's part of the give and take of government, fully appropriate. So, we lots of places do this, and we can make sure that we draw the lines in an appropriate place.
And who's gonna be the person that's gonna answer to any inquiry from residents?
You mean who's going to post the information, Leo?
Yeah, if somebody asks a question or something, who's gonna be the person that's gonna answer? The
Well,
PR guys or what?
if we are all in agreement to move forward with this, we would have to actually appoint one person to be in charge of actually, checking this website and answering any questions that are on there. But first, we're trying to make sure everyone is in agreement that we actually move it towards this direction.
Because that was the problem before, that we don't know how we're gonna control that.
Hey,
You're gonna
Leo,
have
hey,
people
Leo.
on the other side that they're gonna go and start sending stuff that you have to give them the proper answer. If not, this is gonna be a nightmare.
Well, Leo, maybe that's going to be part of when we talk to the PR firm, of an additional PR function for them, again, to gather the information from the right source and present it in a meaningful way that folks, it's easy to understand and that sticks to the point. I think, to me, some of the bigger issues also are, that, and I don't know, Steve, from a legal perspective, how we could deal with this, that, this doesn't turn into a political page. And
Exactly.
that just like what we do with ordinances, like when someone comes to speak about after an ordinance, we make sure that that's the topic they speak on. To me, like if the city, posts a topic about, we're going to have a new picnic, it shouldn't be a forum where someone has issues totally unrelated to the picnic that they choose. Now, here's a way for me to bring up something I want to talk about, which isn't the picnic. I mean, is there some way to control that, or is that in the rules and regulations?
Yeah, I mean, look, any rule we have, we can, any rule we had, we has to be, sort of enforced neutrally. So, you have to be very careful if you're going to be, making the determination that something is not pertaining to the topic at hand, that you're going to remove it if it is otherwise, if it's otherwise appropriate. My expectation and recommendation would be that really only if something was extreme, that it be, that it be removed, and that there be a justification anytime you do that. We can look at it, and if there's a way to deal with that neutrally, maybe to put it in the appropriate location if the comment is relating to a completely unrelated issue, and we can do that in a fair and neutral way. But as I said, look, the good and bad of social media is if you're going to allow public comment, it is a forum, just as people come here and criticize you and make comments. They'll be able to do that within the rules. So it is a tricky thing. We're going to have to be very careful about it if we do it, and we'll have to see how it works and see if it's done in a manner that the council is comfortable with, and then adjust as need be. But generally speaking, unless something really crosses the line, you're going to want to be very careful before you remove anybody's posts. And we need to have the processes in place to do that correctly.
It's just very unfortunate. I mean, I think there's a definite need. I mean, communication is critical. And, even just when we first took office 8 years ago, you could rely on the newspaper, either the Record or the Chronicle had its own reporter. So a lot of the news, things that were discussed at the council meetings, things that were happening in the city was published in the newspaper. And that's no longer true. So, it's very difficult, and we need our residents to understand and hear about what's happening in city and important decisions that are being made, et cetera. So I'm 100% for getting it on social media in a positive, respectful way. And yes, if it's on topic, absolutely. If someone doesn't agree, we want to hear that, and that's a big part of the reason why we want it to be on social media. But, we all know that, that there is always the opportunity that people that have their own agenda, be it political or not, to just take any opportunity to change the topic from what it is that we're trying to communicate to the
Yeah.
public and turn it into their own idea or agenda. And that's where I think that's going to be tough.
And it's not only political attack, but sometimes they go into personal attack, lies and everything else. And that's no, I can take criticism from anybody about a real topic related to the city, but when they're going to get into personal attacks and lies, now they are crossing the line. And that's what I don't like.
Well, I think the best thing we can do is give it a try. We all agree that we need to,
Oh, I don't have no problem.
need to
We
do
can
something.
try them out.
And let's hope that people, want to be part of this, that, hey, if we're going to talk about a picnic, they want to talk about the picnic too. And they want to say, hey, what about this? Or did you think about this? They're not going to start bringing up, well, what about the 5 traffic lights that I don't think work? That's not part of the picnic.
I don't have no problem with that because it's only a small percentage of people they're gonna use in the wrong way.
Well,
you know?
let's hope everybody cooperates and we turn
Oh,
it into something
We
real.
try, ain't nothing wrong. We try. That's
I
it.
agree, Jackie, that we have to try it. I think we have to
Yeah.
try it. Hope it works.
Yeah, and I mean, look, what you can do is I'm not necessarily, as I said, while I think you need to be particularly cautious before you take anything down. If someone is putting something up that's not germane, you can answer speech with more speech and saying, this is not germane to the topic. You can respond back to that post, and we'd appreciate if you don't, if you save that for the appropriate location, then you've responded back with more speech as opposed to, essentially, potentially taking something down, which could be problematic. Look, it's a tricky thing out there, but you do have to understand it's sort of, it's a bit of the Wild West out there with social media. It doesn't mean you run from it because it is such an effective tool and it's how particularly younger people communicate these days. But you just have to understand it is a bit free flowing and, you play in that field. You just have to be prepared to deal with people, who may not, be interested in following the rules for their own, political or personal gain. And in some cases, you may not be able to do very much about it.
You got 9
That's just the way
minutes.
social media is.
You got 9 minutes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started with the IT department and the PR firm, and I will give a follow-up on July 19th about where we're at with this and if we have any proposed new ideas and follow-up. Since we are a little behind on time, I'm going to move ahead if everyone's okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, my 4th agenda item, I would like to discuss an addition of 2-hour timed parking signs to be added to the following locations. Prospect Avenue from Essex Street heading north on both sides until Central Avenue. And also on Beach Street from Summit Avenue to 2nd Street on both sides. The need for timed parking in this area comes as a recommendation from our parking utility. Many commuters seem to be parking at these locations for long periods of time, and our residents who may need to park there for, let's say, a 2-hour period of time, whether it's a doctor's appointment or a visit to someone, they're unable to do so. So we came up with this idea with the traffic division and the parking utility to add these parking signs to these 2 areas to see how it does, if the residents encounter any issues. We didn't want to just put the signs there, so we're bringing it to your attention that this did come as a recommendation from parking utility and from the traffic division. Does anyone have any concerns for these 2 areas?
This is just Prospect Avenue?
I'm sorry?
Jack? It's just Prospect Ave?
No, it's Prospect Avenue and also Beach Street. We have no signage in these 2 areas as of now, so it has become a commuter parking area. So we wanted to put timed parking signs in these 2 areas. Beach Street from Summit to 2nd and Prospect from Essex to Central.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we reach out to the condo association on this just to get their, I don't want to say blessing, but just to run it by them? I'm sure they're going to be in favor of it because
Sure.
it's their space taken up.
Okay, I'll check.
That sounds like a good.
It sounds like a good idea.
And it's not just commuters, sometimes it's hospital employees, because I
Yes.
remember when I used to be picking my granddaughter up from high school, I'd be seeing that the shift change, all hospital personnel coming out and getting their cars that are parked on Beach Street. So
Mhm.
I think the condo people will be happy about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will definitely send a courtesy notice out to them to see if there are any concerns. And then if not, we'll post those signs. And if we don't get any complaints or any issues, we'll keep them up.
Well, on Beach Street, it goes all the way to Railroad Avenue, and the whole Second Street, from Second Street to First Street, that's all hospital parking. I think those should be included also.
Okay, I will check with Bill Daly and see about that area. We were narrowing it down to test it out almost and see if it alleviated some of the commuter parking. But I will have him inspect this area also, and maybe we'll add it in there also, and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Next, I'm going to introduce our CFO, James Mangan. He is going to be presenting our 2021 debt management plan. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Jack. Got to share my screen for a second. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we want to talk tonight about the debt management plan for a couple of reasons. First, I have to apologize for my voice. I had major bridge work done today, so I'm going to be slurring some words and stuff. All right. But one of the things we noticed during the election was that there was a lot of confusion over debt. And that's understandable because the city's debt management plan, which is part of our financial reform, is drastically different from the prior administration. And it occurred to me that, we talk a lot about financial reform, and I've talked about debt management as a component of financial reform, but we never really got into what exactly does that mean. Okay, so we thought tonight would be a good idea. We are going to be going out for a multi-million-dollar bond sale in a couple of months, so this would be a good opportunity to explain exactly what our debt management policy is. There we go. Okay. So I'm saying recognizing the need for substantial investment in the city's infrastructure. Now, specifically, we're talking about road repairs, sewer improvements, and park and recreation renovations. Okay. The city needed a lot of investment. And because of that, we realized that it became necessary to develop a plan to finance these improvements without increasing taxes. And that was the challenge. Okay. So what we did was that's where the debt management plan came from. And the city's debt management plan, it's been a vital component of our overall financial reform, and it is a sharp departure from the policies of the previous administration. And one of the things I want to point out is the differences between what we're doing, what the previous administration did. There are actually 5 parts to the debt management plan. The first one is that we authorize debt as needed for the city infrastructure improvements up to the statutory limit of 3.5%. Just so you know, the 3.5% set by the state, it means 3.5% of the 3-year average of the equalized valuations. So really what that means is we take the value of all property average from the last 3 years, and we can borrow up to, or we can incur debt up to 3.5% without the state approval. After 3.5%, we need the state approval. Now, this is a huge difference from the previous administration because the prior administration imposed their own limit of 1%. They kept net debt below 1%, whereas we're saying that we will go higher than 1%. What we do that's different, though, is that we don't limit ourselves to a ceiling of 1%. What we do is we do a long-term debt analysis to make sure that there's going to be no tax increase to repay the debt. And that's the biggest difference between this administration and the prior administration. The amount of debt is now determined by our ability to repay that debt without increasing taxes. And it's not limited to a self-imposed ceiling. Okay, that's how we're able to do all the improvements that we're doing and not increasing taxes to do it. Second part of the plan is that we incur debt for the full project amount, including all grants, but we only borrow as much as we need for the project itself. This is also different than the prior administration. You're doing $1 million road program and you have a $200,000 grant, we'll incur debt for the full $1 million. Okay, the prior administration would have incurred debt for only 800,000. And that's one of the ways that they were able to keep the debt limit below the 1%. We don't do that, and I'll explain why in a second. Third part is that we use the proceeds of any grants to pay down any debt that we have issued. And if we get a grant and we haven't issued any debt, then what we do is we use the grant to cancel that unissued debt. And again, that's different from the prior administration because it's a more fiscally conservative approach. And fiscally conservative, I've said this before, has nothing to do with ideology. It has to do with risk. It's less risky to incur debt and then use the grant to pay the debt down. Because what it does is we make sure that just on the off chance that we don't get the grant, and then we're left with having to raise taxes. Okay. The fourth part of the plan says that when we're borrowing, we always use the most cost-effective instrument in the long term, okay? And for example, trying to decide, should we issue notes? Should we do serial bonds? And if we're gonna do notes, should we do iBank notes versus bond anticipation notes? These are all things that in the bond ordinance, the CFO has the authority to determine this. But what we do is we determine it in the long term, not in the short term, okay? And that's a key when you talk about some of the iBank financing that we're doing, because the iBank really works out better for us in the long term. And finally, the last part of the debt management plan says that at the end of the year, we review all capital projects and we cancel any remaining portion of any completed project. And what that does is by canceling that, that also cancels any unissued debt, okay? Now, what the whole plan does is the plan does result in an increase in debt in the short term for a few reasons. First, we're incurring the full amount of the project. We're not doing projects in phases so much. And we're incurring debt for the grants. And then when the grants come in, we pay the debt off. But that does mean that debt goes up in the short term. But it's important to realize that what we're doing is we're not increasing taxes at all in the long term. And that's really the driving force behind the whole debt management plan. Now, in terms of the city of Hackensack, and this was a big issue that came up during the election. As of the end of last year, the city's net debt was $97,525,000. Now, understandably, that's a huge number. It's particularly huge when you think about the prior administration keeping debt below 1%. Never came anywhere near 97 million. The 97 million represents 1.65%. As I said earlier, we're allowed to go up to 3.5%. We're at 1.65%. Again, previous administration would have kept their debt at 1%. What that means is that we have a remaining borrowing power of 109 million. If we wanted to, we could authorize debt for another 109 million, and the state would have no problem with that. But it's important to realize of our $97 million net debt, we've issued 62 million in debt, and we have 34 million in unissued debt. And the reason that's important is because it's the 62 million right now that we are currently paying back. That's part of our debt service budget, a budget that we've said will not increase. But included in that 62 million, understand that, for example, for our combined sewer debt, that 62 million includes $5 million in principal forgiveness through the iBank. Okay, $1 million for fiscal 2019, $2 million for fiscal 20, and another $2 million for fiscal 2021. That's included in that 62 million. We incur the debt, but we won't be paying that back. When the project's completed, we'll end up canceling that portion of the debt. Also included in the 62 million is $1.5 million in grants from either the Bergen County Open Space Trust Fund or community development block grants for road improvements and also for park improvements. Also included in the 62 million is $1.5 million in DOT grants specifically for the Main Street two-way conversion and the streetscape. Okay. Again, part of the plan is that we incur the full debt. So that's $8 million of debt that we won't be paying back. Okay. Now, in terms of all of this, how does Hackensack's debt compare to other municipalities in Southern Bergen County? And I limited the analysis to Southern Bergen County because Northern Bergen County is vastly different than the South. Communities are wealthier, populations are sparser, and actually the debt per capita, which is the amount of debt based on your population, is actually much higher because the populations are much smaller. But what I did was I looked at Hackensack's debt per capita, and that's our debt based on population and where we stand with the other communities of Southern Bergen County. And you can see that we're actually ranked 12th. There are 11 other communities with a higher debt per capita than we do, although first one includes Teterboro. Teterboro throws off every analysis we do, just because of the size of it. But it's important to understand that when we say 97 million, yes, understandably, that's a large number, okay? But it's also relative to Hackensack's population. Okay? There are a number of municipalities that have a much higher debt per capita than Hackensack does. So this has been, the debt management plan, as I said, a very key component of our overall financial reform, because what it does is it allows us to continue investing in the city's infrastructure. And it's that investing in the infrastructure that improves the quality of life for residents without the burden of additional taxes. And if I could just point to one example of that, later on today at the business meeting, we'll be awarding a close to $5 million contract for the sewer separation in the Clay Street area. Now, if you take the plight of the residents of Stanley Place, who have been complaining for 20 years, understandably so, about the fact that the flooding that occurs when it rains includes raw sewage. That's a huge quality of life problem. Now, the prior administration, looked at that problem, investigated it, hired the engineer. What's the cause of the problem? Well, the cause of the problem, simple, is the combined sewer is too small to handle all of the additional wastewater that came from when the high rises were built up on Prospect Avenue. There was a time when the sewer worked fine, handled wastewater and handled stormwater, no flooding. Then you got the development on Prospect Avenue. Now you have to take care of it. Well, if your policy is that your debt is limited to 1%, you can't take care of it. It's just a problem that can't be fixed. That's not our approach. Our approach is improve the quality of life, figure out a way to do it, and what we do is, we figured out a different way of doing it. We have tools available that weren't available before. I'm talking about the iBank. Back in 2000, to fix that problem, you'd have to separate the sewers, which is what we're doing, and then pump the storm water all the way down to the river. Well, we don't have to do that because we've separated the sewers on Main Street. All we have to do is get it to Main Street, and then the sewer separation of Main Street will bring it down to the river. All of that is possible because of the debt management plan, okay? And as I said, there was a lot of talk about debt during the election, and it occurred to me that we really didn't get into the get into the weeds or the details of what the plan is. All right. Later on tonight, at the business meeting, we'll be awarding 2 bond ordinances that both will be, well, one of them anyway, will be adding to our debt. Okay. Anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. There we go.
Any questions from the council?
No,
All right, great job, Jim.
Good
Okay.
job,
Jack,
folks.
Jim,
Thanks so much.
go and put some ice on it.
All right, let's on to
Yeah.
the next.
Okay,
We have public comment.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Need a motion to open to the public.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, anybody from the public who would like to speak, please give your name to the clerk. You have 3 minutes.
They have to raise their hand. There's 12 people,
Okay.
13 people in the public, so I just wanted to see if anybody would raise their hand if they want to speak.
Yes, if you want to speak, please use the raise your hand feature on your device or your computer.
There's no call-in users, so it's just the option on the bottom right-hand corner that says raise hand.
Okay, is everybody hearing that? If you'd like to speak, please use that option. Going once, going twice. Okay, need a motion to close to the public.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Okay,
Motion closed. Do we have to
the
close?
motion
it?
to close the executive session.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims,
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia,
aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. Need a motion to close the council of the whole.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims,
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia,
Aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. Okay, see everybody at the next meeting.